Durnford, also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org. And you can call if you like or text at 709-589-4406. 4406. Yeah, it's good to be back, believe it or not. Rumble was a nightmare. We will be using it for the backup site because you know they're going to give me strikes or take me down at some point like they done 2 years ago with no explanations, right? So I'll be posting there, but YouTube is where everybody knows where I'm to, and we'll make it work. Let me get rid of the nuclear industry theme song of the night. So I had to give up coming in the studio tonight because I kept adding more and more and more. And I was like, how am I going to get this done if I keep adding it? But then you need it to tell the story, right? All right, you'll get it. Unfortunately, like everybody else, you'll get it. So we got a poll tonight somewhere. Right there. No. Oh shit, I brought in the wrong computer to show the poll on. I could probably fix that a little bit later here. Because I'm having problems with my other computer, so I've been using a different computer to pipe in. It's okay. So the poll tonight is, should pro-nuclear give their speeches on top of 30 million Fukushima one-ton bags? And what I mean by that, you got people like the Green New Deal terrorists, I should call them, nuke terrorists, Madison, the monster Hilly. That's going to be one of the first stories we cover tonight, by the way. But I like to see those people get up on top of these millions of one-ton bags of radioactive fallout and give their speeches, right? If you put her on top of these bags and she starts telling you the same lies, then it doesn't make any sense anymore. We're going to have to switch computers here in a bit. This should be fun. We'll get there. Okay, so how just 1% of farmland can meet 1/3 of Canada's energy needs. Well, if 1% of farmland, 1%, not 1/3, 1% of farmland can meet 1/3 of Canada's energy needs, then there's all kinds of other land available too. It doesn't have to be farmland. Ukraine attempts a drone strike on the Kursk nuclear power plant in Russia, and Russia repelled the attack allegedly. So I don't think that happened, but it's a great idea for a false flag where you attack yourself and blame it on somebody you want to go to war with or you're at war with, right? And to sway public's opinion. However, air defense forces managed to repel the strikes. They showed pictures in another story of just soldiers with the Kalashnikov. There was an attempted drone strike and a nuclear power plant attack was repelled by air defense forces. Nuclear waste is misunderstood. That's very disappointing. Madison Hilly, she's with the Green New Deal group. She's a lobbyist from the Breakthrough Institute. And this is where she had branched off to be her own little nightmare for humanity and the 8 million species. It was an interesting picture they chose to put up there. This is a grapevines, I guess. So nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools into the environment. Almost all of them are surrounded by farms. So they can poison you in your supermarkets. Madison Hilly, man, wait till you meet her. Wait till you get some of the load. This was the New York Times. She done an article. I don't think she's smart enough to write these types of articles. You really got to be pretty evil to write an article like this. I'm sure she's trying, but I don't think she was able to articulate it. If she was, well, wow. Wonder who her parents were. Hilly is the founder of the Campaign for a Green Nuclear Deal. Campaign for a green nuclear radioactive Earth wasteland deal. She gets a lot of attention from a lot of politicians. She's hooked up with the Breakthrough Institute. They're as pro-nuclear as you can get. They're lobbyists, right? They're pro-nuclear lobbying. They call themselves the Breakthrough Institute, where they get the ears of all kinds of Congress and senators and underlings in the key positions for the government. On a visit to the site of the former Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan, we covered the story of a senator who allegedly went right to the nuclear meltdown. She discussed radiation exposure to nuclear waste without fanning fear. Well, that's the thing about nuclear is it's fear-based, right? Every facet of it. The terrorists are going to get you if you don't give us $500 billion to protect you. The radiation she got from her visit, about 2 chest x-rays worth. Well, I'll let you decide on your own, but it's absurd to suggest if she actually really did go to the nuclear meltdowns, which is interesting because scientists won't go there or academics. So this is a meltdown. They put this Kevlar sarcophagus around reactor 1 for 5 years. This Kevlar it was all done with cranes, no human intervention. Reactor 4 is quite the enigma. Hilly, Madison. So you see the panels is what you're looking at, laid up on a structure. I got that screwed up already, did I? That's my type of day. Hang on, see if I can fix it anyway. Some things I can fix, some things I can't. Lucky Dana, I can fix that one. So they built this contraption on top of this destroyed building, Madison. And so they built that contraption. They put panels on it. I just showed you one of the panels by themselves. This is all done by cranes. And there's only a stump left of this 190-foot building. You see, they didn't clean the debris off the roofs of the other buildings down there. This is just a stump. The reactor core and the fuel pools are long gone. Now you can see the top of the grader. That's the original building that's supposed to be 190 feet tall. So they built that contraption there and pretended it looked like this, that everything was normal. And they being...
What I'm standing is on top of what used to...
My apologies. All kinds of them had pretended that they were on a building.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside reactor 4 at the Fukushima.
Now, I've been playing this clip at the preamble for quite a long time. I'm trying to build up the numbers so it's a dominant video on my site because it's such a short video. It shows the lies. Now, when you look at Madison, one of the scariest things about this is she's pregnant. That is some scary shit, man. Because, you know, her child, she's going to want her child to grow up and work for the Breakthrough Institute and kill everybody in increments with radiation. Radiation she got from her visits about 2 chest x-rays worth. That's the same thing as Seth Dorn up there from PBS and CBS said, which is simply ludicrous to suggest that they're on top of the building. Same as it is for Madison to suggest Alexandra Cortez of New York was a representative, was at the nuclear meltdowns. Because the fuel pools don't exist, neither does the reactor. So very dangerous that she put her name to it, but she's probably just going to make a few dollars, right? So it was worth the education the representative said she received on a tour. She told her 8.6 million. And they got a lot of false, fake accounts on these government sites. It's on purpose, right? They make them themselves. So she would have got hundreds of x-rays going past these places to get to the meltdown, for goodness sakes. All these abandoned communities up to 70 kilometers out. She then spoke admiringly of France, which is last summer for over half the year, half the fleet in Japan shut down from the gamma shine X-ray neutron bombardments, the beta rays bombardments of the infrastructure deteriorated it, and they had to do major temporary fixes. These are old, decrepit. They're all surrounded by farms, I might add. Now, France, if you look at France gets its cheap uranium by causing a civil war for 60 years in Niger. Displaced all the government. They armed fractions on the borders to displace the government on top of that. They're still there today. There's around 4,000 French soldiers in this war-torn land where they get their cheap uranium, very high-grade cheap uranium. Remember, the French nuclear tests exposed the entire Polynesian population to radiation. Every man, woman, child, every pet, every insect, all the bacteria, all the fungus, everything. France wants to clean up the Algerian nuclear test site, but France won't tell them where the nuclear waste was buried to, where they've done 160 bomb tests or something. And the Sahara Desert was one of them places. That sand blows back to France, by the way, the radioactive fallout every year from the prevailing winds going across the Sahara that they radiated themselves. And given 6 million of the residents iodine pills, because of the old reactors they have, you can't stop the reactors from hemorrhaging because they're, the fuel pool has no containment. Madison. What a sadistic personality. As soon as you look at her, you know there's something wrong there. What a strange picture. She doesn't even know how to smile. Look at that. It frightens me, people like that, eh? They'll do anything for a paycheck. They'll kill half the planet for their paycheck each week. CC-137 plume forecast for North America and Europe. This is France's Institute for Radiological Protection. This model is based on basically 20 days of radioactive fallout, which they admit is underplayed. There should have been way more put into the model. The model was only based basically on venting. And as I showed you the pictures just a moment ago, the reactors are annihilated. They don't exist anymore. The entire internet, this is the last one on France. France wanted the entire internet under government censorship and be able to ban people without explaining why. That France, right? That she's putting up on a pedestal from the Green New Scam. Progressive lawmakers, along with environmental groups like the Sierra Club, Natural Resource Defense Council, and you don't really hear that in natural nuclear carbon. That's too funny. That's hilarious. Progressive lawmakers, along with environmental groups, as if two groups are the representative to the rest of the 8 billion people on the planet, have historically been against nuclear, but it's no surprise many Americans believe nuclear waste poses a terrifying, enormous threat. After talking to engineers, radiation specialists, and waste managers, they don't got no solution, first off. So it's pretty interesting that she says there's nothing to worry about. I come to see this misunderstanding is holding us back. See, it doesn't even sound like a seasoned apologist for the nuclear industry, right? From embracing a powerful clean energy source. There's nothing clean about it. They injected that word in there. And you can't tackle climate change with a tiny fraction, even if it did have some attributes that could be contributed. We must stop seeing nuclear waste as a dangerous problem. Like, if it does fill up with water, it melts down, you got to evacuate that part of your country. You can't eat the food or drink the water for thousands of years. You can't just change that by writing something in the New York Times. But you got to be some kind of sadistic, twisted creature to do that, though. You really, like, you got to be disconnected from all facets of reality, which is appropriate, really. There was another study from France's IRSN of the cesium-137 radioactive fallout was a million to 10 million becquerels a square meter. A square meter over the entire country. See, this model is not played out all the way, but that model does. And after 16, 20 days, the whole planet is covered in brutal radioactive fallout. That's the same French institution that's done that study, right? The French government experts. She's a terrorist by doing what she's doing. She meets all the attributes you need necessary to convict somebody of being a terrorist. What she's doing is just, well, she didn't write it. Obviously, she's not smart enough to write that one, but she put her name on it, and the New York Times ran it, and didn't fact-check a single thing in it. Not one single sentence was fact-checked. The distinct advantage of nuclear is it requires little land. The distinct advantage, geothermal has a better advantage than that, don't it? I'll explain that to you coming up later. Can reliably produce lots of power, whether the time of the day or the season, whether, unlike wind and solar, time of the day, they're talking about night or day for solar, and they're talking about wind, right? But there's many storages, solutions, there's around 20 different ones. If you use what you call water batteries, where you fill up two reservoirs, and you just, two artificial reservoirs, and you pump water up with excess energy, so when you don't have the wind or the sun, it flows back down. Right? But you can also do the same kind of scenario where you go underground with big mine shafts and just compress air into them. They're infinitely better for the environment than stupid, idiotic batteries. And they exist. Geothermal doesn't need none of this, by the way. She's refusing to acknowledge geothermal and claiming that storage is somehow bad. She said it can substitute directly for fossil fuels without backup or storage. Bruce Power just took $4.2 billion for storage that was supposed to be located to the renewable section so they can peak power. National energy agency accrued a global emission targets. Between 2020 and 2026, there's 4,800 gigawatts of renewables coming online. That's equal to all gas, oil, coal, and nuclear combined currently on the planet. So that technology is not going to slow down at 2026. That's just getting his foot going in second gear at that stage, right? But in another 3 years, renewables will conquer it. The only thing was missing and that was scuttled by the industries was storage and geothermal. So you got most universities are working at some part of nuclear. None of them are working on geothermal. And there's enough geothermal under your feet, everybody's feet worldwide, and there's just a fraction of the land mass of the planet, by the way. There's enough geothermal under our feet. It's 1 billion times the 4,800 gigawatts we currently use. Available right under your feet. And it's easy, cheap, and everything else. For this reason, some U.S. investors, policymakers, even a movie director, Oliver Stone, and I was looking for his movie today. Apparently, it's free, so we're going to go through the whole thing. I'm really upset with people like this. Are calling for greatly expanded, which is with Joshua Goldstein, right? Who we've covered many times, a perpetual liar, like crackhead. Nuke terrorist Madison Hilly. Expanding nuclear, last year, you can't expand nuclear capacity right, compared to renewable, for instance. So last year was 400, or 2021 was 291 gigawatts of renewables came online, or energy came online. Only 0.4 gigawatts was nuclear. The other 290.5 gigawatts was renewables. That was equal to 333 large nuclear power plants in 12 months. And the year before was a bit smaller because it gets more every year, right? So 2020 was 260 gigawatts, 264 gigawatts. That was equal to nameplate of 300 large nuclear power plants came online in just 12 months. So in that 48 months, 650 large nuclear power plants came online. But that technology is exploding, and because of the scamdemic that drove up the prices of the commodity, it would have been a hell of a lot more if they hadn't done that, right? But nevertheless, the trend is established firmly, and storage. So the nuclear industry is trying to sabotage everybody's future by creating more of these disease factories on our planet. That's what a nuclear power plant is, a disease factory. That's what Madison is. She's a disease factory. She said one of her few cultural references to nuclear waste is The Simpsons. That's, which, by the way, is not accidental. No, one of the few cultural, most strongest ones out there is the Hulk. Then The Simpsons. This is terrorism. She's terrorism. What she's doing, and she's doing it for a paycheck. She write a little article here, a whole bunch of lies here and a whole bunch of lies there, and that pays the mortgage and new cars every year and vacations and all this. Call it the green new scam is more like it. But this kind of nuclear waste, I'm not referring to water containing the radioisotope tritium. That's a real slap in your face. That nuclear plants regularly releases. Canada's releases are catastrophic numbers, by the way. That doesn't mean it's safe. And, of course, the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. You can't filter the water and only end up with tritium. You can't filter the water. You can no longer get near the filter if you does that. By the way, why don't they let anybody check the tanks independently in Fukushima, which we've had polls about that. Should we be allowed to check the tanks independently? And why is my stream all screwed up? Oh, that sucks. So I'm getting not enough video. How about you guys? Anybody able to hear me anymore? It's fine, James? Because it's showing me there's not enough stream for smooth streaming. We'll keep going. I'll keep my eyes on the comments here to see. And let's keep rolling anyway. Japanese were accused of a cover-up. Hi, everybody. It was Skippy. Well, I can't show you on my screen because I brought in the wrong computer. I'm just going to play a little video. I'll go get the other computer and set it up. So hang on. Ooh, sorry, didn't mean to do that to anybody. I'm going to grab a video, a little couple of minute video to play. That's really important. I'll hook up the other computer so that we can get we can bring up the poll and stuff like that. Sounds okay in London. 5x5, so everybody's saying is good. Okay, so let's play this video, and I'll hook up the other computer so we can bring in the poll. This is Kathleen Higley stood up. There's a whole bunch of apologists sat down. They're all well-known actors in the propaganda machine, like Madison, Hilly. But these people are much more likely to have written the article than Madison was. So I'm going to play this, and this teaches you how a group of people control the International Atomic Energy Agency, ERPA, UNSCLEAR, the ICP, PR, and a whole bunch of organizations. It's actually the same scumbags. And Kathleen Higley is definitely a disgusting scumbag.
When I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this, or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented. The ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and ERPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. ERPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own US NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known. It's been operating nearly 100 years, not quite. Main commission, 10 people. It's got 5 standing committees. So it's 100-ish folks. I lead one of the 5 committees. If you look at the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation that looked at the effects from Chernobyl, from Fukushima, from other areas, and that has about 30, roughly, countries that are represented in that group. If you start teasing through these pictures, you're going to see the same people on every one of those organizations. So the same people from ICRP are on UNSCEAR, they're in ERPA. If you look at the NCRP, again, the US organization that advises the country on radiation protection issues, it's 100 people, a lot of gray-haired 100 people. And most of them are part of UNSCEAR, are part of ERPA, are part of ICRP, participate in IAEA. So the result, or the real world, is that there's not that many folks that really do radiation safety, radionuclide transport, dose calculations, all of this in the world. It's a pretty small club. And we wear 20 hats. Today I put on 3 pins, and I could put on a whole bunch more, but Health Physics Society, ICRP, Certified Health Physicist, I've got NCRP on there, I've done IAEA, and so the point is, we're a small group, you should cherish us. So
Namie. My apologies to everybody. We'll get there. Not as fast as we would normally like, but we'll get there. Here we go. No big deal, just keep her going. So, anti-nuclear groups like to scaremonger over this, but despite the fact you need to drink over a gallon of treated water being released from Fukushima to get the equivalent dose, you heard it, of eating a banana. That's absurd. Somebody would actually say that. That's absurd. Just bear with me, folks. It's absurd if somebody would ever say that. And we're back in business here. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I can't get the HDMI to come up. Let's keep it rolling. Let's get her rolling again. So she claims it's like eating a banana. It's just I'll explain to you why what she says is so crazy. An elementary school in Japan is using water bottles, to shield students from the gamma shine coming from outdoors. It's Kuriyama City. It's about 40 kilometers away. And what they're doing is 34 miles, rather, west of Fukushima Daiichi, is using water bottles to shield the students. Water bottles are filled up with water, placed inside of square boxes that are stacked around the classrooms, indoors and outdoors. So you still can't stop the airborne, the children from breathing it in. Instead of evacuating the children, somebody like Madison has convinced people to stay there, and the only solution the victims can come up with, and this reduced the radiation exposures by 1/3 inside the school from the gamma shine, the x-rays from the outside. But the right thing to do would be to move the meditors. So Madison should go down there and tell the children how wonderful carbon-free nuclear actually is. When she has her baby, of course. Baby can learn to be a monster just like mommy. According to the school, it seems to have reduced radiation levels inside by 1/3. Well, you're supposed to run away. If, not even try that, you're supposed to run away. Of course, Kuriyama City, and I'll show you 2012 from Nuclear. Residents of Kuriyama City have been concerned about the high amounts of radioactive material, and now every house in that community is entitled to be decontaminated. You can't decontaminate a house in Kuriyama. So Kuriyama City, UNCLEAR, or United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects, which United Nations shouldn't exist. They're a corporation, they have no sovereignty over anybody. They're like the Breakthrough Institute, but they got 195 militaries. So average disposition density of just cesium, because nothing else comes out of a reactor, only cesium according to the crazies. And UNCLEAR is right at the head of crazies. So I'll put it on the big screen for you. To your left is the communities, and the next one to it is the population. The next one that I got highlighted is the disposition per square meter, like your coffee table or something. And the numbers are shocking. Kuriyama City is 162,000 counts per minute. So this is airborne. So this is, and you're only acknowledging cesium. So putting bottles might reduce the shine, but you're talking about this is an actual nuclear wasteland because it's surrounded by nuclear wastelands. And school lunches are tested. Parents are concerned. They don't know where the food's coming from. Well, you're living in this is child abuse to bring a child. She would never bring her child to Koriyama or any of these other cities. She would never go there personally. She's a bit easier to look at when she don't smile, but when she smiles, that's some scary shit, man. She said you need to drink over a gallon of you can't treat the water. I'll explain that to you right now. Being released from Fukushima get the equivalent radiation exposure to eating a banana. And we don't hear that too often. And when we do, it's really offensive for someone to say it's like a banana. Like a banana. TEPCO made Fukushima plant to a machine for generating radioactive water. Now it says getting no data out to you guys. Now it says 1,500 kilobytes a second. My goodness, Madison. Why do you hate everybody so much? Okay, I'm going to just bear with me 1 second. I'll put the computer out front where I can see it. I won't be able to show the poll tonight, but it's there. If you're on the stream, you'll see it. I think that's the first time we've never actually been able to show the poll. I'm going to blame nuclear for this. We'll stomp on it a little bit harder. Okay, we're back in gear, baby. We're back. I'm back. That was a bit of an ordeal, actually. That was a bit of an ordeal. We're back on YouTube. That's what I like to see YouTube's face. I don't see that at the end of the century yet. That's the only thing they're good at anyway, right? For lobbying groups. Okay. Perfect. Let's do that one more time. I like the sound of it. Yeah, keep it rolling. 2 sieverts of better radiation emitted from a single liter of water, so you can't filter that. Just imagine trying to give a liter of that to her child. She'd claw your eyes right out of your head. By the way, 2 liters of it is a lethal dose to walk past it. You'll die within the next couple of weeks. If you stay there for 40 or 50 minutes, you're going to die that day. If you got a 5-gallon jug of this water, 5 gallons, everybody who walks by it at the subway station, for instance, would die that day, forever. You can do that all day, every day, forever, and it'll kill everybody. Hanford in Washington dumped 450 billion gallons of this stuff into the soil. That's equal to an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet, Madison. She didn't write the article. I have no doubt she didn't write that article, but she's got some very evil friends, I can tell you that much. There's another one, water of a sievert per hour hemorrhaging out. They don't know where it's coming from or how to stop it. 1,000 years from now, the contaminated water will be hammering into the Pacific Ocean. It never stopped, right? Back to Madison, I suppose. What about the spent fuel pools? Isn't it radioactive for hundreds of thousands of years? She says the way radiation works, the waste products are the most radioactive or short-lived. See, this is sounding more and more and more like Rod Adams, isn't it? And those that last a long time are far less dangerous. That's not true. Once it goes through a chain reaction, that's true for natural, normal, everyday background. That's not true for man-made, though. That's the problem with it, right? You know, plutonium is man-made, got a very long half-life, and you use that to power spaceships, probes up to Mars for years and years and years till they break down. But the radiation from the plutonium is not going to go away. So what she's saying, obviously, is it's pretty despicable for her to frame it that way. And the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. That's why almost all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. and they're growing food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. We got a poll tonight. At 39 votes, should pro-nuclear give their speeches on top of the 30 million Fukushima 1-ton bags of radiation? 39 votes, 95%. Well, I don't know why anybody would disagree with that, outside of someone like Madison, the monster, Hilly. She says, a young person in her 20s expecting a child. That frightens the shit out of me. I feel very comfortable with the way we're managing nuclear waste, which making more of it and passing this responsibility onto our kids. I hope my daughter's generation will inherit many new nuclear plants making clean power and the waste that comes with them. Wow, man. Just holy shit. She wouldn't eat food from anywhere within 100 miles of these places, first off. Maybe she's stupid and would, I don't know. But to use her unborn child to manipulate you and disarm you from being appropriately worried is a whole different level of banana madness. Using the word banana is that's a pretty low thing to do. You know they're super degenerate scum when you hear that, right? I'll take you through some studies. The influence of post-Chernobyl followed on birth defects and abortion rates in Austria. Every time you see something like that, that's Japan's typical day. It should be. Trends in the human sex odds of births in Europe after Chernobyl. Chernobyl's single accident changed the ratios of all females and males. What do you think Japan had done to the entire planet? Right, and you get more males than females, less population, of course. Chernobyl, prenatal loss of 400 male fetuses. She should go to Chernobyl and have her baby. Just saying, I'm not trying to be mean or something. I just thought she's pro-nuclear, can't hurt her or her unborn little brat. Secondary sex ratio and trends in the associated gender-specific birth. Maybe she'll get an it if she goes down there near nuclear facilities in France and Germany. It'll probably come out like what's-his-face, Sam, the former head of Nuclear Waste in America, got caught stealing women's clothes. Chernobyl followed prenatal mortality in England and Wales. In Fukushima, across Japan, it's 14,200 per 100,000 children need open heart surgery. And Down syndrome skyrocketed everywhere nuclear. Wherever nuclear is, Down syndrome is sure to follow. Madison. Chromosome aberration Norwegian reindeer following Chernobyl accident. Now, I'm not going to wish that she'd have a child like one of these Chernobyl children. She should go down there and have her child down there. Instead of having children, she should go down and adopt one of these, shouldn't she? 256 assessments of the influence of Chernobyl on the birth defects and abortion rates in Austria and everywhere else worldwide. Estimated lifetime effective dose to hunters and their families. For the three most contaminated counties in Sweden after Chernobyl. See that thing around his neck? His parents can't tell you what's going on. They have to send that. There's 80,000 children got that. They should send them to her. She'll study the children gladly, as long as it's a kickback for her. Incidents of illegal abortion in Sweden after Chernobyl. Yeah, it's all kinds of congenital malformations across Japan and the Asian country because of Fukushima. Now Northern Hemisphere is hammered on top of that. Ionizing radiation, human gender proportions at birth. Madison, go down there and get one of these children, Madison. You're making all kinds of money being a scumbag. Give a poor victim from Chernobyl a break, Madison. Legally induced abortions in Denmark. There you go, Madison, get your ass down to Denmark, and then you can adopt one of these kids down there. Or is that sick? She should get an abortion so she can adopt one of the victims from Chernobyl. Data's crossed the line. Dana's finally done it. He's finally cracked up. Not even 5 days off can fix him. He's finally lost it. Pregnant show coming Norway. And this is what I mean. I had to get away from the studio because I started dragging in all this. I start getting upset, right? Go down and tell those children how wonderful nuclear is, Madison. You crazy, kooky weirdo. Early infant mortality in West Germany before and after Chernobyl. I think Madison should have to move and base her, to Belarus or Chernobyl or even Sellafield. Go down to Columbia. There's no war down there. Go down there and hang out for a couple of weeks. After you get your child, of course. So we can make sure we don't have to worry about him in the future, or her, or it, whatever it is you're going to have. This is February 2020. Trends in birth and birth sex ratio in the vicinity of research reactors. These are low megawatt reactors. What blows me away is the anti-neutrino study out of Canada a few weeks ago. We're 150 miles away from a reactor, 1.25 mile under the rocks. It picked up the anti-neutrinos like crazy in the water. Because they're traveling at just a little quicker than the speed of light. So they show up blue in clear water, and there's no interference from anything else down there. So it has to be the reactors. That's crazy. So even living 150 miles away on the other side of a mountain won't protect you. Abnormal retina, so it screws up your eyeballs and your children's future, Madison. That's one of the craziest pictures you're ever going to see. We got hundreds and hundreds of them. Children hanging out around Geiger counters. The Geiger counters were put there, they're fake ones, meant to manipulate the children. And the children got to go past millions of one-ton bags of radiation to get to school each day. So Madison's like, why not get a real job? Why be so freaking evil? Because that's who they are. The only way you can get this job if you're a natural-born scumbag. Human sex ratio at birth and residential proximities to nuclear disease factories in France. Nuclear power plants are disease factories. Madison should go down and adopt one of these children and have an abortion. Effects of the radiation on the reproductive system. So you won't even have to have an abortion, Madison, if you go down there. Prenatal irradiation, which is a great idea for people like Madison. Them should have multiple x-rays. Madison should have dozens of x-rays to protect her baby. Maybe she'll get a Spider-Man out of it or something. Human sex ratio at birth after atmospheric nuclear weapons testing, suggesting to change the sex ratio of all humans, and that by proxy then all species on the entire planet, due to the nuclear war that they call atmospheric weapons testing. That was a nuclear war, right? Same nuclear bombs, same radioactive fallout. How is it not a nuclear war? And so if you know your pause when you see Down syndrome in your community, then that's radioactive polio, and schizophrenia, and your people going blind. These people are terrorists, right? What else makes sense? Why do they terrorize us if they're not terrorists? So you need to drink a gallon of treat it. You can't treat it because there's so much radiation, you can never change the filter. You can never get near the building again. If you fill up a tank at 2.2 sieverts a liter, you can't build another tank on site. And where you're on a fault line with massive earthquakes constantly, 1,000 a year, and these tanks are just temporary tanks, you fill up one of them and they break open. You never get back on the site, right? But let's quantify those assertions. TEPCO abandoned the REVA system, which is the same as the ALP system, 2014 in August. Unused and kept out of service. The REVA system, 2014, 3 years later, has yet to function reliably. What are you talking about? Because if you turn it on, the filter is so radioactive, you got to run away. You can never change the filter. The filter needs to be like 8 feet thick lead surrounding it. And how are you going to move something like that? And second off, you can't filter it because it's radiation. Because if you bring that, like if you try to filter the water that we're talking about, you're spraying over the reactor cores, these are particulates. So if you put all that in the tank, it combines on the bottom of it and turns into a lot of sediment. which is fuel particulates. What means now is the neutron bombardment will start a chain reaction. It'll burn a hole in the tank. You can't contain it, see? And we know this because we've seen it in Mayak, we've seen it in the Chechnya River, we've seen it in Fukushima, we've seen it in Hanford. TEPCO says the groundwater bypass operation is not having effect. They can't build a fence to stop the radiation because it's idiotic to suggest you could, but that was the lie they fed everybody. The ice wall, why not build a real wall? Why would you build an ice wall, for goodness sakes? Just what? It's about stealing, right? You know, the victims that are there want to steal as much as they can. Water above 1 sievert per liter. Nothing has been done for 2 years to stop the radioactive. Now, what do you call it? Every time you hear the word leak and nuclear meltdown and the words leak, that's contempt is what you're hearing for you and your loved ones in all 8 million species, that they have no right to poison everything. The world has no right to sit in silence either. And nuke terrorists like this has no right to do what she's doing. It's bad enough that the pro-nuclear industry is out there doing it, but young adults, this is how they're going to make their living, write a few articles and nothing but propaganda and pay mortgages and buy new cars and raise children, while everybody else has to suffer because of your deceit and dishonesty. It's revolting. It's hideous. It's insidious that somebody actually would take a job like that and try to be good at it. The Green New Deal is trying to be good at it, see? She said, the waste should really be the chief selling point for nuclear energy. And there's not a person on the planet would agree with that statement, particularly for those who care about the environment. This stuff is splitting the atoms into the environment. That's the problem with nuclear waste, Madison. It never stops splitting the atoms into the environment. You can't contain it. And it never goes away and attacks everything with replicating cells. There's not very much of it. Well, really, Hanford dumped just in a single instant 450 billion gallons, which is like 6-foot aquarium, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. You think that's the only spot on the planet that has those particular attributes in the nuclear industry? All the national laboratories done similar antiques, the catastrophic events against the species. This is assassination of the species. She said it's easy to contain, which is absurd to suggest it is, and becomes safer with time and can be recycled. It's illegal to recycle it, by the way, in America. They're trying to change it, and they probably will, because there's no one there to effectively oppose them. That doesn't mean, like if you look at Donneray in the United Kingdom, if you look at La Hague in France, and the other one that they got in France, and the Sellafield in the United Kingdom, just those 4 reprocessing facilities. By the way, La Hague has 500 security guards because it's not like a banana. Those 4 reprocessing facilities are the very few, by the way, on the entire planet. The studies that we've covered many times here shows they contaminated the entire Arctic of what's the proper word for it? Invisible plumes of radioactive fallout for 60 years, let's put it that way. Here, look, U.S. plutonium facilities might blow up, as they like to call it, experience a criticality event. 450 billion gallons of industrial radiological contaminants were dumped directly into the soil. And downriver from Hanford, by the way, is the Columbian River, which is right alongside of it. That water feeds thousands and thousands and thousands of farms. And that's where all of that would have ended up. We're talking about 6 feet wide aquarium of lethal radioactive by the liter liquids, legacy nuclear weapons, nuclear history waste is insidious. Dumped directly into the soil. They have a lot of snow each year. They have a lot of rain each spring and fall, and they have a lot of dry summers where the stuff just turns to dust and blows invisible plumes around the entire planet. There's not a single attribute good about it. Back to the crazies. And every cast of spent nuclear fuel represents about 2.2 million tons of carbon. Of course, you can't have any species without carbon. You can't have any trees or plants or animals or any forests, any meadows. You can't have any animals or humans or babies without carbon. Huge container ships are the biggest problem of emissions, by the way, Madison. She said they weren't emitted into the atmosphere from fossil fuels. They weren't emitted. She's talking about nuclear. Well, first off, all nuclear power plants need 2 gas, oil, and coal plants to run, Madison. And second off, 1 container ship is equal to 50 million cars. If you really want to go after pollution, and not the fake stuff, but the real stuff, the world's 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars on the planet. There's 90,000 of them on the planet, on the ocean at any given time. That's equal to 4 trillion people a day on the planet. And when you scale it up from what's currently on the planet. So claiming that a cast of used fuel, which is hemorrhaging radiation into the environment, this is Madison's father. Hi, Mr. Hilly. Don't forget to give us a little plug out there. We're going to expand, but we're going to use Rumble for our backup site until they get their shit together over there. Or I get it together here. So Spider-Man was created to lull your children into complacency and you over decades, the same as the Hulk. By the nuclear industry, right? Same as kryptonite, krypton. It's a nasty isotope to children, by the way. All these fake superheroes, so you can't be a superhero to your children. Your grandparents are no longer your children's heroes. Your aunts and uncles are no longer. In fact, they got rid of the word hero. They displaced it with GoPro hero and guitar hero. Like if it was a crime to trick you into poisoning yourself with radiation, just about everybody we cover would be entitled to electric chair. Or worse. In the old days, we got rid of them pretty quick. Guilty. Problem solved. Now we got to fight with all the superheroes. Nobody is even having a debate anymore. Nobody's even having a debate anymore. Hello? Let's get back out of here. Just bear with me. I'm going to get myself set back up. Wait now, I'll get there. Just bear with me. Oh crap, not the alien shit. Pew! Where's your little gun toe? That's not it. Never mind. Let's keep going here. We'll get there. I was just looking for a reference and I can't seem to find it. That's me tonight. Get you. Okay, let's keep rolling here. So, 15 container ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. So, people claiming, particularly because you got the campaign for a green nuclear deal, she's the author, apparently, of that, which I doubt highly. She's from the Breakthrough Institute. She's just regurgitating what they told her, right? If she went down there and stood on top of these bags and wrote on those bags, Dana is wrong, besides being a moron, I still wouldn't. She's crazy enough to do something like this, is what I'm trying to say. See, she would never let her child go to school with Geiger counters in the background. She would never let her child play on a playground like that. And I would never let my kid marry somebody that doesn't know how to smile and looks even remotely like that. I like, bring that freaking pet back to the dog pound. I don't want that in my house. It's ready to bite somebody. Imagine Madison having to get her child checked all the time like that. At the Green New Deal. What a despicable person, though, right? To take it to that level. Why'd she go down there and dress like that and tell the children how lucky they are? Right? Why doesn't she go down and tell the children how blessed they are to be in the Green New Deal? So she can make a bag of money and everybody else can starve to death. Or the Green Nuclear Deal, Madison Hilly, founder and executive director of Scumbags Incorporated. So Madison, go down there and stand on these bags and give us your speech again. I want to hear her down there telling us in the middle of the 30 million one-ton bags how wonderful and great nuke all those laws, like it's like a banana. She began her career fighting for nuclear power. She began her career fighting for nuclear power as a researcher and an analyst for environmental progress. I'm sorry, that's Michael Schellenberg. Where the hell did I get the Breakthrough Institute to? They're both the same anyway, but they're not the same companies. But that's even worse. Now I know why she looks so fucking ugly and stupid. She works for Michael Schellenberg. Excuse the French-Canadian here. Hey, Madison, have her going down American on all these bags how wrong that great nuclear is. Huh, Madison? Can you do that for me? Hey, Madison, why don't you go down over to Scotland and Ireland and tell these children how lucky they are to go to Scotland and Ireland to get away from Chernobyl, the Belarus orphanages they've been left in behind. Have it going down there, Madison, and telling us how wonderful you are, Madison. Get up there and sing it loud, sing it proud. I love nuclear. I'm Madison. Cuckoo. Hilly. And she was involved, and soon as I should have realized it, right? When I seen Stand Up for Nuclear, it was environmental progress. I forgot about that, right? But for some reason I was thinking Breakthrough Institute. Maybe it's there. I missed it. But like we cover so many of these scumbags from environmental progress, which is Michael Schellenberg, and Breakthrough Institute, which is they're despicable at Breakthrough Institute. So I don't feel bad yelling at them, but they're busy, eh? And so they got all these. She's got all these organizations. Doctors for Nuclear Energy Canada is a single doctor, right, from Ontario. What's it, Chris? I can't remember his last name. We've covered him lots of times. Why are they such scumbags? Like, this is how they make a living, but why do they hate everybody so much? I can't wrap my mind around it, see? She's got all these organizations backing her up, including Nuclear Mythbusters, right? Han from Taiwan. And Taiwan's legacy was despicable. Hong actually went on a food hunger strike because he wanted to put Fukushima nuclear wasteland food on the ballot in 2018 in Taiwan, and did. And James Hansen went down there and got the animosity equivalent of a Nobel Prize, $1.4 million bursary for promoting nuclear for Taiwan. At the same time as Hong was being hauled off to the hospital from faking a hunger strike after a couple of days. Yeah, so why don't the nuclear industry go down there and hang out on top of these bags and tell us how good nuclear is? I thought that was a great poll, right? Should the pro-nuclear degenerate scum give their speeches on top of 30 million one-ton bags of Fukushima radiation? Hillary should go down and tell every one of those kids how lucky they are, right? Miss Hilly, or whatever the hell her name is, Madison. And she got all these companies backing her up, and she's still a degenerate scumbag. So it's not about being a human. She's all about how many people can I poison with this information and screw up their lives forever, so I can get a fat paycheck. That's what she's talking about. Hey, we got James Lucy calling in. Just give us a second, James. I'm almost ready. And that James is from the comments section, folks. Hi, James. How are you, sir?
Mr. Dana.
Mr. Dana.
I just wanted to call it. Everything looks great on my end. Everything looks good.
Good.
Rumble was such a disaster.
Yeah.
There was nothing on you. There was nothing on you.
No, I know. Yeah.
But anyway,
No, I know, man.
I just wanted to share something that's just so disturbing. Like, Kevin's brought it up a few times, but I have it on my news feed. Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
Of all people.
Yeah, I was going to do a video sometime this week, hopefully. Go ahead.
And you know that nobody's ever sat with him and explained. He's a movie director.
He's made some good stuff, right? Anti-war and that, environment shows. But this is over the top evil, isn't it? Go ahead.
But the guy has never sat down and talked to anyone like you.
Yeah, we'll wreck their narrative. Yeah.
But that's what this guy's supposed to be all about.
Yeah.
About finding the truth, right?
That's right. Yeah, good point.
He was all,
Great point,
he was
actually.
all big about JFK and everything. Like, he created the whole congressional. I mean, the guy, his movie alone, started a whole new, look at the Kennedy assassination, and it's still ongoing, of course. They're never going to get to it. But he alone triggered that movement,
And still considered cutting edge, too, yeah. Good point.
So you know that the guy just must be just completely in the clouds. He only knows what people have told him, what he trusts.
Well, Goldstein, right? Joshua Goldstein and the rest of them are filling him up with. I thought about it. I don't know what to make of that. I got to watch the documentary to really, we've covered it a few times, 4 or 5 times actually. Pretty upsetting to hear the stuff they're saying, but when I see the video, I'm going to chop that video up and do a whole show just on that video, because I find it that disturbing myself, James. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you could totally do that, Dana. That would be awesome.
Yeah, well, it's going to be free. It's going to be free, so that means I can do it. See?
Right. No. I mean, because I really feel like he's just out in left field. He doesn't know.
Okay.
He really has no idea what he's talking about. And it's just like Madison. They get fed all this bullshit. It's like, one uranium fuel pellet equals 100 gallons of oil.
Yeah.
It's like 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I laugh every time I see it. You're breaking up a bit there. Can you hold it?
They never ask the question what does it take to make the one fuel pellet?
I know. Isn't that something? It's shocking, really, what it takes to make a bloody fuel pellet. The whole process, and the time it makes on top of that, just to get it out of the ground, is absurd. The amount of pollution that they're created, and then I'm just trying to get folks to appreciate what you're saying. There is that whole process to get the pellets, and then they only can get 1 or 2% of the energy out of it, and then they got to put it in a fuel pool, where now it's going to split atoms into the environment, as long as it's exposed to the environment. And the numbers we're talking about are just catastrophic for all species. Yeah, when you add it up.
It is so sad. It's so sad that they've got a grip on the world into believing this bullshit. Madison just smiling away, just like, it makes sense. Like, nuclear's magical. You put the fuel pellets in the fuel, all great stuff, and I have to worry about
and
the
if you
in the bowl.
if you rub the fuel cast, the genie will come out and give you 3 wishes.
Right. I don't know how how they sleep. I mean, they're either just really stupid and they're able to sleep at night, or they just don't care. They just really they don't care about the starfish. They don't care about the snow crab. They just hire a bunch of people. Like, let's make up stories about maybe the aliens took snow crabs away. Maybe that's what's going on. And that's a serious issue. This is a serious. There's no salmon. I mean, like, Kevin's been reporting, Tim Martin and everybody. There's no salmon in Oregon.
No, they closed it down too here in Canada on the West Coast too. It's closed.
But the whole symbolism of abundance is the salmon. And it's always been that way. And it's gone now. And nobody gets it. And it's like, here we are.
People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on boats just to go out and catch a few salmon. And we're talking an absurd amount of people doing this. It's a massive industry. And then the sports fishing industry for taking people out is massive. You're talking $600, $700, $800, $900 a person to go out for a day and try to catch a salmon. And so this is a big bang to the market, to the industries out there who are dependent upon it. I got a program ready to go on it. I got all those headlines gathered up, of course, obviously. And it's stunning. Like, and I'm looking for some catalyst where people are paying attention before I do the presentation on the die-offs again, right? I'm not, I hate to say the word, I'm hoping for a die-off that'll get people's attention so I can come out and say, hey, hang on a second, right? But because I know it's going to happen. We've seen so many examples of that, right? Yeah, no, it's...
I have all the faith in the world in you, Dana, you know that. And
I know you do, actually, yeah.
I just wanted to call in. I just wanted to say this. It helps so much for me to get this off my chest. And it's total therapy, so...
Yeah, good to hear, man. That's good stuff. That's what it's all about, Kevin.
All right, well, Dana,
Kevin does the same thing. Love you too, man. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate that, James. Okay. It was James Lucid, as you know. That's not his real last name, but it almost is. He uses so much. And anybody else want to call in? You can call in at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. So we're going to use Rumble as a backup site because it's way too many kinks for me to work with. And it's probably pretty rough on everybody else. Let's try to get through the Madison disaster because we got another disaster. 2 more disasters to get through tonight is Fukushima. We got a lot on that, man. Holy crap. And then we got a news cycle, a whole bunch of stuff we want to be able to hopefully dive into or bang into a little bit. So this is some of her cohorts in crime. Heather Hoff. And you might know Heather from Mothers for Nuclear, right? We've covered it many times. And I got pictures of them where it's got the captions, Evil Mothers for Nuclear. She's one of those people. She should go down there and get on top of the bags and tell Mothers for Nuclear how wonderful nuclear power is. The article did not liken the water to a liquid containing an amount of radiation that might be found in bananas. So there were some dissenting voices in the comments section of her story. The article did not liken the water to a liquid containing an amount of radiation that might be found in a banana. Yeah, no, what? Yeah. They couldn't believe she actually done it. Like, I couldn't believe it either when I seen it. I think it's just, they're not naive people. They're not gullible. They're not misinformed. They know exactly what they're doing. She's writing the article because she knows exactly what the difference. She's doing it to make a company and a paycheck and a good living for herself and her little inbreeds, and everybody in all the species be damned, as long as she makes a paycheck. If the engineers handling the Fukushima containers were wearing hazmat suits, do they also clothe themselves with the same fallout armor when snacking on bananas? So should we get paper suits whenever we go to the supermarket because we're going to walk past bananas? There's no science background here. And you wouldn't believe the comments. They had all the pro-nuclear were hanging out in the comments. There's thousands of comments. I was going to get in there, but I said, no, I'll just do a video on Monday. And I've been like a Buddha now for 5 days. I'm working on shows and stuff like that, but I've been basically a Buddha where I'm trying to get refocused, resituated after. I'm trying myself to breach this planet to get them to fight for their existence, to fight for the species, and you're up against a prolific, monolithic industry that has enormous amount of resources, has it's an absurd amount of resources. And if they want to do something, they can raise the money, no matter how many hundreds of millions of dollars or millions or hundreds of thousands. Say they want to do a protest, the industry will throw tens of thousands of dollars at them to protest nuclear plants closing or something like that. The nuclear industry will support these people that does that. But when it comes to people like me that is actually extremely honest and frustrated sometimes, unfortunately, and that comes through, there's not much I can do about it. Like when I call for hanging these people, I don't mean hang the people, right? But you should lose your degrees. Everybody where I'm from talks that kind of way, but it's not appropriate, I guess, for a lot of people. But we don't mean we don't have any ill will for these mass murders, these genocide disease factory machines at all. I'm not actively promoting. I'm just saying that in a normal world, you wouldn't expect these people to be able to exist. Now, to be fair, it's not illegal to poison you with radiation. Congress and parliaments and the Japanese Diet, for instance, government agencies don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. It's not illegal. Only the Nuclear Regulatory Agency has that authority in each country to make it illegal to poison you with radiation, which means they can't poison you in the hospitals if you do it. They can't use radiation to murder your loved ones and yourselves in the hospitals if they make it illegal to poison you with radiation. They would have to stop using radiation in Geiger counters. They'd have to stop using, because they are poisoning you. They consider it an acceptable trade-off. But it's not a trade-off and it's not acceptable. As I showed you, the video clip I showed you earlier, Kathleen Higley talked about UNSCLEAR and ERPA and the IAEA and the ICPR and the rest of them, these organizations, these 100 organizations, there's 100 people and they're all on each one of these boards. Are the same people. As she said, you should treasure us. And everybody knew to laugh on cue, of course. Anti-nuclear activists, or, humans, like to scaremonger, tell the truth, aka tell the truth, about radiation, despite the fact you need to drink over a gallon of treated water being released from the nuclear meltdowns to get the equivalent radiation exposure of eating a banana. I'm just stunned that somebody would say that after all these years, because after Fukushima, the first couple of years, everybody was saying it, and I personally beat the shit out of each one of them. I went after each one of them with an entire video dedicated to calling him a scumbag. And he stopped using bananas. The words bananas is pretty rare. It's only a couple times a year that we'll hear it used. And environmental progress, Michael Schellenberg's little lapdog genocidal monsters should know better. The fact that you need to drink over a gallon of treated water from Fukushima to get the equivalent radiation dose of eating a banana, which is natural. Banana's potassium. I got another way, actually, I can explain that. It's just more work. That's okay. Ain't like I don't do enough of it. So I just had 5 days off. Suck it up and work, Dana. Suck it up and work. You had 5 days off. Stop your whining, Dana. I know. I got the perfect way to explain it. It was Stephen Starr, Dr. Stephen Starr. So Curie is 37 billion becquerels. The becquerel is atomic disintegration per second. It does it every second. And it could do this for millions of years. Once it's gone through a chain reaction, this is different than natural stuff. Natural stuff is not harmful, only the man-made anthropogenic radiation. So potassium-40, per gram would be 0.000071 curies per gram, 71 10 millionths of a curie per gram, versus cesium would be 88 curies per gram times 88 times 37 billion atomic disintegrations. Because you'll eat potassium by the gram a lot of the times, right, in a meal. Strontium 90, but your body equalizes, homeostasis. Your body regulates it. You can't get any more potassium than you normally need. But cesium and strontium bioaccumulates in your muscles, your organs, your bones, particularly the children in their bones where it mutates their stem cells. Potassium doesn't mutate them stem cells. So the difference is absurd. So you can't go telling people that it's equivalent to eating a banana, because the banana's got nothing to do with man-made anthropogenic radiation. And to suggest that they can filter the water and that it even would remotely in that frame of references is one of the most dishonest things conceivable. It's one of the most hateful things you can say, because you know you're lying. It's a downright outrageous, unbelievable. It's contempt when you hear that statement. That's contempt. That's hate. I call it hate. So like when I say they should be hung, that's nowhere near the danger as them trying to disarm people, stop them from being able to. Like if you ask her to go down and mark all these bags, Dana is wrong. There's zero possibility. You can't call the water treated because you can't treat radioactive water you're pouring over a melted reactor core. The biggest byproduct, by the way, is the curium isotopes. So for the senator, the representative, she said, went to Fukushima, had to drive through all these abandoned communities to get to the nuclear meltdowns, by the way. She had to drive past millions of one-ton bags of radiation, and then claimed that she had the animosity equivalent of 2 chest x-rays, which got nothing to do, because an x-ray is on and off. This is in your body, pulsing energy every second for the rest of your life. It's in your hair, it's in your clothes. You can't get it out of your lungs. It burns holes through your lungs, ends up in your bones. Water being released. So Hinkley Point, so let's change it. Thank God. How long did that take us? Oh my God. Hour and 23 minutes. That's the way it goes sometimes. So let's think about Madison, talking about it being carbon-free and emission-free. There's no adverse effects. First off, this is the biggest project in human history, is the Hinkley Point reactor disease factory. Now, I'll get more into that picture you see in here in a second. But it's surrounded by farms. So all the emissions from the fuel pools that she says are harmless are going to poison the shit out of you for the rest of your life. It's hard to imagine you only got 20 people on these shows, isn't it? So Hinkley Point, you're seeing every piece of metal used on this site is triple inspected. There's 9,000 people working there feverishly. This is the most resource-intensive industry in human history, and they're calling it the support net zero. Look, you see the resources, and try to wrap your mind around how much resources you're looking at there. There's enough material there to build, just in that one site, to build geothermal that would power the entire country, just from this one site. And the resources they're using are so good that the reason everything is triple inspected, because there's going to be gamma shines, x-rays, neutron bombardments, beta rays for 40, 50, 60 years, and that's going to break down the integrity. If you didn't do that, this stuff might last 100 years. So if you made geothermal with this massive, absurd amount of material, they could get enough cement there to build a sidewalk to Rome, for God's sakes. If you took that and flipped it and just used it for geothermal, it'll be ready 10 years quicker, and it'll power the entire country. You wouldn't have to worry about gas, oil, or coal ever again. This is the greediness of the nuclear industry. They're going for broke because they know that they're going to be displaced, and they're doing everything to scuttle everybody's future so nuclear can get another couple of decades of paychecks. But look at the massive resources is what I want you to consider. I'm going to flash through all these pictures because there's a stupid amount. But think about these resources. You're talking about 30 to 40 billion dollars, or 43 billion US dollars it actually is. But it's hard to comprehend the amount of material that they're using. It's hard to comprehend what's already underground. You can see the ground they got done around this. And you're going to take on a tour. He's going to come across as a normal, everyday human. The scale of this, of course, is the biggest thing on the entire planet. This is just to pump water per minute. Try wrapping your mind around that. Try wrapping your mind around the amount of steel is enough to build enough geothermal to power the entire country forever. Look at it. It's absurdness. This is just one of the reactors. Those cranes are the biggest cranes in the world are using. The amount of energy and time and effort and equipment, like just the emissions from the production of all the metal is mind-boggling. And then to have the arrogance to talk about net zero, which was a paper, like really, if you took this material, you can build all the geothermal you need for the entire country in one go. Look at it. It's absurdness, right? You got so much material there that you can barely wrap my mind around it. And so they're calling this emissions free. And then it takes 14, 15 years to build it. And the emissions just to build it absurd. It's going to need 2 great big power plants just to power this. It can't run on its own power. It's like I say, it's the biggest construction thing in human history. Look at this ridiculous amount of material. And they're going around calling this resource free. And this is the shaft, 3.2 kilometers out to sea. They got 2 major ships out there, big, huge disasters. One great big resource-intensive disaster machine. Look how big these are drilling down so they can suck water in, right? That's what they're drilling down to tap into. You can imagine the resources, these crazy. And so they're going to tap down, drill down, and then tap into the pipe that's 3.2 kilometers offshore. And they killed billions and billions of large fish and turtles and everything else in the filters of these things each year. They boil, each reactor is over 1 million gallons a minute. There's 16 million glasses in a gallon. Each glass got 1 billion creatures in it. Eggs and larvae and everything else. These are nothing but destructive idiot machines. And you could have built all the geothermal for the entire country and been done with it. And they're going to build another one like this apparently too, right? Everything about this, the scale of everything is mind-numbing. Like I said, enough cement there to build a sidewalk to Rome. And this is apparently resource-free. This, again, you're going to need 2 gas, oil, coal plants dedicated to it. Dedicated to it. Look at it. My God, boy. So I like to see him go down on top of these millions of 1-ton bags and tell everybody how carbon-free, and at the same time using this in the background, telling us it's carbon-free, it's resource-free, and that it's net zero for the country and everything else. These people are lunatics. They're self-centered. egotistic, and they'll take out the whole planet just to get their own way. Workers needed for Japan's tsunami-hit farmland, in a nuclear wasteland, we might add. This is Miyagi. Yeah, Miyagi Prefecture. And they got to go, which is a nuclear waste, it's a hot zone, right? There was many countries called it a hot zone originally. They can only pick up soil, the millions of one-ton bags, from 3% of the land. So it's still melting down, and the forests are permanently radioactive. Every time the wind blows, it's shaking radioactive fallout all over the planet. 23 Hiroshima residents file lawsuits. There's not that many of them left, right? For not being recognized as victims of atomic bombing's black rain. First off, they built it back on a nuclear bomb crater, so you should be entitled to health care free for the rest of your life if you were unfortunate enough to be born and raised there. In their lawsuits on Friday, the plaintiffs, aged 70 to 90, argued the scope of the black rain was much wider than the government claimed, and that if they were found to have been exposed to the radioactive rain, they should be identified as victims regardless of whether they were sick or not. And at Hanford Nuclear Reservation, 585 square mile nuclear wasteland, where they've been trying to clean up for about 60 years, and they got another 600 years or something to go, that there's a new law was passed. They took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed with the original, was that if you worked for a lousy 8 hours at Hanford in your life 50 years ago, and you're sick today, you don't have to prove it happened. You just had to prove you worked there for 8 hours. And you're entitled to health care. You're entitled to a pension. And so, if you were in Hiroshima or Nagasaki, then there's zero possibility you shouldn't be entitled to the same kind of health care at least, and certainly a pension. Because with health issues come disability illnesses, as you can't provide a living. The black rain, so like, it didn't necessarily have to be rain in order to quantify that you got poisoned. You just had to be in that part of Japan. The radiation never goes away, so if you lived there, then that's evidence that you were poisoned. The Japanese government divided radioactive contaminated areas from Fukushima explosions into heavy rain exposure zones and light rain. So now they're claiming unless it rained there was no radioactive fallout. This is absurdness. Like 72 years of victimizing the people. For goodness sakes, give them some comfort in the last couple of years of their lives. Why be so friggin' evil? Why deny them? Well, because you set a precedence for other countries too, and people that around these nuclear power plants start wondering if this is what's happened to their loved ones and themselves, right? So the industry can only survive by denying everybody a future. That's the only way the industry can survive. And that's why Madison on conscienceless crazies are producing companies to go out and capitalize on the deceit and deception and dishonesty and misery machines that they're misery machines, right? In 2021, the Hiroshima court ruled 84 people in Hiroshima Prefecture are eligible to receive state health care benefits. We covered it. Though they were exposed to black rain outside an area recognized by the government. We found isotopes from Hiroshima, and a lot of it, in the ice caps in Canada a year after. A catastrophic amount, actually. But you have people at ground zero. So, it's not an industry that should exist. And they should get on top of these millions of one-ton bags and explain why it should. That'll be interesting. Japanese authority doubtful of removal process of Fukushima radioactive sandbags. This came out today. Yeah, May the 1st. So we've covered this quite a lot over the years. They put sandbags in a number of places. where there's huge radiation. They're claiming it's 4 point. Let me go through. Japanese authorities expressed doubt over the removal of the radioactive sandbags at the Fukushima nuclear plant as the plant operator aims to start the recycling procedures this fiscal year. Recycling procedures. So first off, wherever those bags are to, you can't recycle anything down there. This is a nuclear wasteland. Everything is radio on a hideous amount. Aim to start the recycling procedure. That's the strangest thing I've ever said, by the way, because what we're talking about, we'll get to in a minute, are huge numbers. The recycling approach needs to be fully verified, adding it was unclear whether the procedure can be carried out as expected. The zero light packed sandbags were put in the basement floors of the factory building. There is no factory building. I think this was the incinerator building and the pump house. But these are not what I've never heard them referred to as factory buildings before. As an emergency measure to lower radiation levels of contaminated water after 2011 nuclear meltdowns they called disasters. Although the radiation levels have weakened with time, which is absurd to suggest it has, the sandbags can still emit radiation levels of 4.4 sieverts per hour. So if you got two bags there, that's 8.8 sieverts per hour. Well, first off, 4.4 sieverts is a lethal dose. So they said they're going to use robots, but then the robots are lethal doses. You can't breathe that air. You can't be in that close to that environment because of the shine, the rays, the neutron bombardments that is coming out of it. This has to be fuel particulates that are causing this, right? So it can kill people exposed to the high readings for 2 hours. Like if you take one bag of it and you hang out there for a few minutes, that'll kill you. It's silly to suggest that it's going to take 2 hours before you end up with a lethal dose. You're talking about actual rays, right, and shine. So that melts your organs. And you can't reverse that. You can't switch that off. Plans to use robots to collect the sandbags and store them in other receptacles. The receptacles are like garbage bins, is what they're talking about here. First off, the garbage bins receptacles have to be 4 feet thick lid all around, bottom and top. They have to be cast, right? 50,000 ton cast or something. They're going to use robots. Now, the robots we know, they haven't got no robots that can go down and collect these bags. It's ludicrous to suggest they have. And that the minute you do it, the top of the robot becomes so radioactive that a human can never get near it again. But you can't shield electronics from these types of radiation. And we know that because they try all kinds of shieldings for spacecraft, right? Because Jupiter is a nasty radioactive wasteland, and some of these other planets, they can't get close to them. Evacuation orders lifted in the last of 6 impacted Fukushima, that was today. In the last of 6 impacted Fukushima areas, so it's very deceptive when you read the headline. So as you start to read through it, you realize they're talking about little tiny sections of the communities. Meaning entry restrictions no longer in place in any designated reconstruction base. And the reconstruction base are these little sections of the communities in order to, for insurance purposes, they call it, how do I go for that? I wonder, hang on. There we go. That industry is crazy. So the little areas they're talking about, we've covered this a lot in the last couple of weeks, are Futaba, Namie, Iitate, the Tomioka, Madison, Katsurao. So you got these little spots, and I'll give you a better version of that. You got these little spots. See those little spots? The yellow and the whites, these are little zones, what they call reconstruction zones. These are reconstruction zones. The Japanese government on Monday lifted an evacuation order for parts of the village near the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Parts. Any designated reconstruction base. The restrictions were removed from the village after the lifting similar orders in 5 other municipalities, but these are just little tiny fractions of the communities that they're actually talking about. So the 5 other municipalities where restrictions were lifted earlier in the last month or so were Futaba, which is 2 kilometers from the ongoing nuclear meltdowns, Namie, which is 10 kilometers away, Tomioka, which is about 7, Okuma, which is on the north side of the plant, joined onto the plant, about 2 kilometers away, and Katsurao, which is less than 10 kilometers away. So these are just little sections of the community, but they play it, and Lydia, of course, and the 5 others. So that's 6 places. The difficult to return zone is 337 square kilometers area. In principle, it's inaccessible due to high levels of radiation. But within that zone, around 27 square kilometers of land in 6 of the municipalities are listed as reconstruction revitalization bases, where state-funded decontamination work, where the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society were sacrificed to pretend that they cleaned it up, right? Which, of course, you can't clean up. So 337 square kilometer area, 27 square kilometers, is considered reconstruction, revitalization. You're allowed to move into those areas. So you can't stop your car. But the whole story is crazy. So you can go to those yellow zones, but you can't stop your car along the way, and you can't cross the street when you get there, and you can't go out in the garden and play. And it can't be safe because you're in a nuclear wasteland. And this is their official map. But Tokyo is not should be evacuated, 36 million people. The numbers there are stunning. Of different isotopes, too, we're talking about, and the surrounding areas. And we've been covering this for years and years and years. And again, there's this disconnect, right? Was designated as one of the bases. The order for the village was also lifted from an area outside the base. It was a first for such an order to be lifted from somewhere outside that base. Lydiat is located between 30 and 50 kilometers northwest of the Fukushima Daiichi power station, which suffered a multiple reactor meltdown. Not meltdowns, but reactor meltdown. They do this all the time, but they don't put the S on it. And obviously that's not an accident, right? Because they consistently don't do it. It's like they're going to, it's illegal for them to put an S on it because you see it throughout all the media doing the same thing. There's all the gullible people. Apparently, though, there's only 3 families with temporary, just 3 households made up of 7 total people have applied for overnight stay. Just 7 people in the former little cities, right? To swiftly remove restrictions on products. We're missing the headline of that. Let me go backwards here. Japan asked EU, I must have skipped down one. Japan asked EU to lift restrictions put on exports after 2011. They already have. By the way, we got a poll tonight. The poll goes like this. Should the pro-nuclear give their speeches on top of the 30 million Fukushima 1-ton bags of radiation? Because that would be the end of it. See? They couldn't do it. They can't do it because it's impossible for them to win it. Japan asks EU to lift restrictions for the nuclear wasteland on agricultural foods in the nuclear wasteland. And the EU, of course, is so corrupt, they call nuclear green, so they very well probably will do it. Not only that, they want to remove restrictions on wild mushrooms from Fukushima Prefecture. And the food was banned from 14 prefectures. I'll show you that. So the food was banned not just from Fukushima, which is the very last spot on the entire planet you ever want to eat food from. It was banned by 55 countries from 14 prefectures. For over a decade, they replaced the people in those countries with the pro-nuclear and lifted restrictions on a lot of them. And we've had polls, should the EU lift restrictions on Fukushima food? We've always got a resounding course not. The restrictions were implemented after multiple reactor meltdowns. They actually used an S in that one. It's very rare. It's like finding a four-leaf clover is finding them saying reactors with an S. The important role of innovation is responding to the changing climate. Really, to even suggest that climate had some attributes in this? Anyway, got a stunning 23 people on the show. Hello, everybody. Wow, where did all you guys come from? It's been a decade to build up that many people. Work myself to death every day so I get 23 people on my show. As long as 2 of them are policymakers and the rest of them are good people, I'm pretty happy. The important role of the innovation is responding to a changing climate. What an arrogant thing to say, changing climate. They are climate change. Radioactive fallout is climate change. You have invisible plumes covering the entire planet, pulsing energy at the speed of light every second for 80 years, constantly adding to it all day, every day from the fuel pools worldwide, all the dumping, all the accidental nuclear meltdowns, massive inventories. By the way, that model in the bottom right-hand corner is 19.5 days, 468 hours. Evacuation orders lifted from parts of village near the nuclear disaster. Nuclear meltdowns. Why don't they say nuclear meltdowns? Nuclear plant. You got to read the story. Hopefully you'll see it somewhere in there. Lifted an evacuation order for parts of Lydiate village. Parts. The disaster hit the nuclear meltdown at Fukushima nuclear power plant. Disaster hit. The move means there's no entry restrictions currently in place for any designated reconstruction bases. So they had 6 reconstruction bases, and in each 6 different communities, and the reconstruction bases are just a fraction of the community. That's where they lifted the restrictions for the first time. Whoopee-doo. You can't clean up something in the middle of a nuclear wasteland. Right? It can't be done. Japan lifted evacuation orders in 2 Fukushima towns. This was March 22nd. We covered this when it came out. I just want to throw it in there again. 12 years later, they lifted, and cripple is nuclear keyword, cover word for nuclear meltdown. Evacuation orders were lifted in parts of Namie. This was another one we covered. Or not. Yeah, this was April 27th. No, this is one I haven't covered. Well, yeah, they kind of talked about it a few weeks ago. We covered it a little bit. So now some more updates on this one. This is the so-called ELP systems filters. This is what this is about. Pretty rare we hear anything about that, right? This is the cover story, though. TEPCO's running out of space to store the radioactive slurry. So they're saying they're filtering the water to pour over the reactor cores, and it's slurry. It's not, this is pure fuel material we're talking about. So now they're going to disenfranchise it and call it slurry. I barely contain myself sometimes. The number 1 power plant is running out of storage space for slurry, a mud-like waste product containing radioactive material removed from contaminated water that is still accumulating at the site. Okay, so we just covered the stories of these communities that are off limit, except for these little sections, because it's a nuclear wasteland. It's off limit. But the water pouring on the actual nuclear meltdown itself is not is according to them, is like a banana or even harmless. for the contaminated water. So they're definitely suggesting this is the contaminated water. The slurry, what they're calling slurry, is removed from contaminated water through the advanced liquid processing system, ELPS, that I showed you earlier, didn't work in 2014, 3 years later. And 3.5 years later, the REVA system hadn't worked either. And that the series system, SARRY, which was supposed to be filtering the unicorn known as cesium, didn't work. So they couldn't filter anything for 3.5 years in a nuclear wasteland with multiple nuclear reactors and fuel pools melted down all around them. This is a no-go. We're talking about the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. We're not talking about nuclear scientists or nuclear companies or nuclear corporations or Bechtel or anybody, any universities or anybody else. We're talking about victims of society that are there. There's no academics there. If the slurry tanks reach full capacity, we're going there, are we? May have to review its operation on treating contaminated water. The problem could also destabilize the overall premise of the company's decommissioning work. Of course, this is madness. I think they said they got 4,000 something filters from the ELP system. Like, first off, when you concentrate radiation, it's going to melt down. It's going to be producing gases that are volatile. If you introduce air or water into it, it'll detonate. Or oxygen into it, it can detonate or spark, right? You're talking about something that is you're talking about a lot of it. And so you can't just put this in a bucket or put this in 4 feet of lead and everything else, because that's not what they're talking about. But that's what you would have to use. And you couldn't filter it because the filter can't filter this stuff. If it bioaccumulates and you got to run away, you can never get near the filtration system forever. That's why in 2014, the REVA, the ELPS, and the series system didn't work, right? So it's saying radioactive sludge. I can barely contain my contempt anymore. Which is fine, because I guess we're getting close to the end, are we? And the south side of number 1, number 4 reactor. Storage facility is part of the spent cesium absorption tower, which was the series system, which we know didn't work. So they're just making it up as they go, one after another. They said over the past year, TEPCO added about 1 HIC, which is the container acronym, every 2 days on average. They were changing the filter. So they have something like 4,143 filters. See, it's not like an oil filter in your car. This kind of filter is the world's biggest. Each filter is the world's biggest dirty bomb. If you filter it, you can never get near it again. Like you can't, like the pipes that are running to the filter, you can't step over without getting a lethal dose. Chairman of Fisheries Cooperative in South Korea promises radioactive checks on seafood product. They actually shipped back 6 million pounds in one go in 2012 or 13 or something, right? They had hotspots there 1,000 times normal background levels a year later. Had deadly lessons for Fukushima changed Japan and the world? Oh, this is Martin Frackler, is it? Yeah, Martin Frackler, who used to write for that New York Times, which was Madison Hilly earlier, right? They're insidious. Wave taller than houses. Some of the waves were 140 feet tall. Traveling at 500 miles per hour. Launching nuclear meltdowns. I've never ever heard that before. Launching nuclear meltdown. Tsunami knocked out the power and launching a nuclear meltdown, whose fallout still affects Japan's citizens' international relations, and internal politics. To this day, according to Martin Fackler. I hate Martin. no offense, but I hate him. He's been around a very long time. He's a despicable creature. In fact, I believe it was Harvard University, or I can't remember exactly, because we covered this. When Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Oxford, MIT, Berkeley, I covered all of them, their original presentations after the meltdown. I still got them. I should do it again because you took down my old site, right? But we actually covered each one of their presentations. I think it was Harvard University, instead of using a nuclear scientist, and they got tons of them, they used Martin. It's absurd. It's absurd. He reported on the Fukushima accident for New York Times arrived in Japan one day after the quake struck. His team earned him a spot on the finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. So he got a prize for covering up Fukushima. Yeah, the Harvard Kennedy School. He worked with them after the meltdown. They brought him in to explain Fukushima nuclear meltdown. Advancing the understanding of spent fuel pools during loss of cooling accidents. So that story was a crazy story that is the Nuclear Energy Association, I believe. Yeah, there they are. Or let me look at this, because I wanted to cover this individually. Because the Fukushima fuel pools melted down. Let me show it to you. So they're pretending that they didn't. And that bugs me, but we expect it, right? But that bugs the shit out of me that people do that. Whoever following the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident, international nuclear community initiated disassessment of the safety spent fuel pools, which would look like that. But see, they would have been at the very top of the building. There's only the stumps of reactor 3 and 4 left. I can show you where the fuel pools went. Hang on, here we go. They covered the entire planet. And they done it in 19.5 days. This is the Norwegian Institute of Air Research. I'm a bit off my game tonight because we took 5 days off. And believe it or not, it's really difficult to do what I'm doing. And taking 5 days off, like, there's a little catch-up I noticed going on here. I'm trying to get this back under, trying to get this, trying to YouTube, I shouldn't be doing stuff like that to me. Following the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident, the international nuclear community initiated a deep assessment. Well, they covered it up. They pretend it never happened. And then they got the balls to pretend that they have some redeeming qualities. They got to get pictures of them to try to make them seem like they're actual people. But what they do is they just cover up all of these brutal accidents. They cover up all of these brutal accidents. Survey on protective actions for radiological and nuclear emergencies. Survey on protective accidents. Well, you can't protect the population, and I'll show you why. That's the problem with radiation. You can't contain it. You can't protect the population. You have to evacuate the continent, right, to protect the population. Let me show you this radioactive fallout. So how do you protect the population? How do you protect the population from that? Because that's radioactive fallout. After 20 days, it covers the whole planet. So how do you protect the population? Let me look at it again. I'm going to speed it up for you. So this is around the 20, this is the 1st of April. So this is 20 days later. That's 20 days of radioactive fallout. That's France's official government agencies, by the way. France's government agencies. Okay, well, I'm going to save this one because these people really bother me. And I was overlooking at their site, and I wanted to beat the shit of them properly, not rush my way through it. So we'll call it a night. I feel my throat is getting tickled. Yeah, we're up to 2 hours anyway, so that's usually all I can last yelling into the microphone. So we'll be back tomorrow night. Now, there's the music too. Go some out music before we get into it. So the Rumble site is going to be the backup site because you know they're going to take down this site at some point. They're going to give me strikes. I won't be able to stream here. I'll be posting at Rumble. And some other sites. And I was supposed to record the show tonight to get around whatever they're putting into my videos. Good night, everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. Let's get the poll. I can't bring it up on the screen, unfortunately, tonight. We got 53 votes, 92% said yes, pro-nuclear should give their speeches on top of 30 million Fukushima one-ton bags of radiation. Because they can't, right? They can't sweep 30 million one-ton bags under the rug by getting on top of them and say nuclear has some redeeming qualities. And so that's a losing proposition for them, right? Thanks for everybody. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. We only had 21 people on our show for most of the night. It's pretty dismal. Do all this work and only get 20 or 21 people. That's censorship gone crazy because I came back, I suppose. Very disappointing that they're that evil. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night, same place, same time. We got shitloads of news to catch up to. We got brutal amount showing up every day. And we got no choice. We got to come out and bang into the nuclear industry. And that's what I got for everybody tonight. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Thanks for everybody. Thank you. Stephen Young donated $50 the weekend. Thank you, Stephen. Prime time. And hope you're doing well, my friend. We'll see everybody on the other side. Tomorrow night, we'll pick up where we left off tonight with a magic pen. Survey on protective actions for radiological nuclear emergencies I got a couple of big shows ready to go. We got a die-off video ready to go. We're ready to go. We had 5 days of Buddha to our boots. See everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Have a great night, great day tomorrow.